Learn more at ESD.NY.gov.
Presidential backlash, personally defending senior advisor Jared Kushner.
A source close to the matter is saying that it was the Russians who first proposed the idea, not Kushner.
We've had the back channel connections with adversaries for generations. I don't quite understand where's the crime.
Is it a crime for Jared Kushner to speak to Ambassador Kislyak? Answer, no.
Mike Dubke is out as the White House Communications Director. Can you confirm that?
He has expressed his desire to leave the White House.
In just a few hours, dash cam video of Tiger Woods' arrest expected to be released.
That picture, he should look at it. He should say, wait, what keeps dragging me down? It's always the same in my business. It's an unaddressed internal conflict.
6-year-old Christian Jacobs, who stole our hearts. He told him, he's like, do you want to meet my daddy? He's buried over here. It was sweet, it was innocent, and he loved it.
What she means is it's awesome.
That is a look at the White House right now, and that is where the president is after he met, of course, with our youngest Marine yesterday. Right. But the president's going to have a full slate as he doesn't have anything formal on the agenda today. But we do know this. He's back out, and he's got a domestic agenda to move forward after what many say was a home run overseas.
Absolutely. He spent more than a week over there, had a great visit with so many world leaders, then was there at the memorial service yesterday honoring our troops. We're going to bring in Laura Ingraham, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of LifeZette and also a Fox News contributor. Good morning to you, Laura.
Good morning, Laura.
Hey, guys. It's always a better Tuesday with friends.
All right.
I like it. I like it.
Sure. So we do have some news coming out of the White House right away. Mike Dubke is out as communications director, and he was basically the newest hire on a department that needs a lot more. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I have to say it's not that all that surprising. In the first 6 months of an administration, you see a shakeout. There is a shakeout. It's like a baseball team. You put someone in as shortstop, turns out he might be better at third, might be better to send down to the minor leagues, might be better off the team. None of this surprises me. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think they're learning about how they need to hone their communication skills, marry policies with events. So, like, for instance, last week, I guess, we learned that 30,000 criminal aliens, including MS-13 members, had been deported from the country since Trump took over. That's great news. You know, I'd like to see Trump go to Manassas, Virginia, and sit with a family for 15 minutes that has had to deal with the MS-13 violence, and go visit a police station and say, guys, thank you for everything you're doing. That's the kind of work I think they're going to start doing at the White House. They've already, you saw it in the foreign trip. It worked fabulously. And I don't think it's a big deal. These kind of shakeouts are routine, frankly, and in high, this is like high intensity, high impact, 4 or 5 months here.
Yeah, we've heard, Laura, they want to take it on the road, take the show on the road. He believes he has a lot of power when he's with the people, bringing those kind of messages straight to them. We're also hearing possibilities of a war room to take on all of these Russia things, more of a separation.
It's happening.
It's happening, a separation between the comms department, which can think long term, and the press secretary, which is sort of in the day-to-day knife fighting. Do you think they're getting it right? Do you think they're on the precipice of being where they need to be to drive the proactive message you're talking about?
I think they're getting closer. I think all the dumping on Sean Spicer has been absurd and ridiculous and overblown. Look, the media are going to salivate every time the word Russia is mentioned. I know we're going to get into that. But what they did last week in that foreign trip, and what we saw the extension of Trump in such a positive, patriotic, and hopeful yet determined manner yesterday at Arlington. That is what we want to see from our president. These investigations should go forward. I hope they're going to be expeditiously handled. But they need to stay on message. And from my sense and my sources inside the White House, that is what they're in the process of doing. It's not going to happen overnight. Nothing does.
Yeah,
but that's all right.
We played a soundbite earlier of someone from Ohio. She's a political commentator from Ohio. She was on another network over the weekend. And
actually, she's a Democratic congresswoman.
Democratic congresswoman, okay. And she was saying the people in Ohio, she's a Democrat, Laura, people in Ohio do not care about this Russia stuff. They care about jobs.
I was in Las Vegas last week, the week before in Houston, in Dallas, and then in Florida. I do a lot of appearances across the country, and the number one thing that people come up and say to me is, when is Congress going to get itself in gear and push through the Trump agenda? And I think that's where the pressure needs to be put now. The White House has done unbelievable work already without the help of Congress. But now the pressure needs to go to Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell to get off their derrieres and get this agenda pushed through. That's what's going to drive this economic renewal, and that's going to make all these investigations, I think, in eventuality, look like they're frankly quite irrelevant, because this economy is going to get going, and that's going to be the best thing for the country and for the president.
What do you think about Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator John McCain? They're constantly commenting against this president and not getting on board with the GOP.
Well, they weren't for Trump, and they're still not for Trump. Trump has a lot of barricades to jump over. He has the press, he has the Democrat establishment, he has Barack Obama, Valerie Jarrett, and that whole war room that's still operating, and he has the Never Trumpers in the Republican caucus.
Well, I would have to say that I got to separate McCain and Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham went to bat for him.
Lindsey's been good.
He's been really good. Listen, he wants to stay in the Paris Agreement. That's an honest disagreement. You should do that if that's your not feel. But he has actually seized the problem with the Comey memo story. He saw the folly. He saw the folly in the Jared Kushner story, and I think he's been calling it as he sees it. For John McCain, I think I think he's also being true to his school.
Yeah.
But let's see what happens, because I think his wife could be working for the administration shortly. All right, let's talk about this. NATO, the visit. After he leaves, the president feels positive about it. And now it turns out Angela Merkel, running for re-election, comes out and essentially says this about the U.S. relationship and Germany. The times in which we can rely fully on others, they are somewhat over. This is what I experienced over the last few days, clearly about the meetings with Trump. We Europeans must really take our destiny into our own hands.
Good.
Your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I, for one, am ecstatic that the Europeans are now having to face this bizarre concept, this unusual concept of actually paying their fair share of their own defense. I think it's about time that we had an American president that said, we love our alliance, which he said, but you can't put it all on the backs of the American taxpayers. We are $20 trillion in debt. This is not 1986. We have an enormous financial burden for the next generation. And I think the fact that Merkel said that is a great sign for Donald Trump. That speech he gave, where he stared down the Europeans and again, this is tough love for our friends. You guys have got to pay your fair share. Merkel's reaction is the typical reaction of an individual who realizes that, oh wait, no longer are the people going to be played for suckers. Oops, we've got to actually pay our fair share. It's about time, especially with a $60+ billion trade surplus they have with the United States. They have a lot of money to spend on defense, and it's about time they start doing it.
And Laura, a big part of that reaction was fear that President Trump and the United States, as a result, may pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, an international regulatory agreement.
That's going to hurt our economy.
Yeah, that's where his focus is on the economy. Where do you think he comes down this week? A lot of eyes on what he does there
with Paris.
My sense is that the administration will pull out of the agreement, but perhaps for maybe they'll take under consideration new negotiations down the road. But right now, he has to keep his focus on what is going to be a drag on the economy, get rid of it, and move forward with economic renewal. That's what he has to do. And when you look at how this treaty will affect the United States versus Asian countries, India, which will not have to live up to the obligations that we do, it's going to be an albatross around the American economy's neck. He can't let that happen.
Right. Some of the highlights. We're supposed to be writing a $3 billion check to third world countries to incentivize them to do things that are green friendly. Also, we're going to have to get down to the carbon emissions that are going to be dramatically reduced in an unrealistic way, perhaps, than any other country. That's certainly going to affect our economy. But when you have Tillerson, Secretary of State, for staying in, when you have your Secretary of Defense for staying in, when you have Jared Kushner staying in, you still say he's leaving?
He's not going to do it. I mean, it would be a complete betrayal of his base and a betrayal of his message, which was American sovereignty first, the American economy first, America first. Maybe in the future we can renegotiate it in a way that would be would be actually beneficial to the United States and sensitive to, climate concerns. But this treaty, the way this was negotiated, is a drag on the U.S. economy. I think he should give an address to the nation. I guess he would, to explain this, which I think would be really important. And I actually think it would galvanize more support for him if he laid it out very clearly.
Absolutely.
Again, it's a positive for us. We are reasserting America's role in the world and America's focus on the home front. That is a good thing. It's across the board a good thing.
The agreement was written by Barack Obama and globalists who want to use this to further leverage their agenda.
It's almost as bad as the Iran deal. It's like what the Iran deal was for foreign policy and military. This is for the economy. It's that bad.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about religion, because on LifeZette, there's an article about how Islam is on track to overtake Christianity as the world's #1 religion. That's in 2050.
Yep. Across the globe. Islam is even looking at making gains in Central America. I was down in Central America last year and talking to a lot of folks in Guatemala about the rise of Islamic converts from previously Catholic localities in even Central America, South America. Look, they're proselytizing. And I think where there's a retreat of Christianity and even Judaism, there is a space for other ideologies, other political movements. Sometimes it's environmentalism as the new religion. Sometimes it's atheism as the new orthodoxy. But in some regions of the world, we're seeing a real rise and a real spike in Islamic conversion. I think we all have to have a conversation about what that means, about our own faith, our own adherence to our own religious tenets. But as we see Christianity retreat in Europe, marriage on the decline, birth rate, people look for absolutes and comfort in absolutes. And I think that will have in some cases, a very, very deleterious effect on what we understand to be the European culture and the American culture.
So what you're seeing across Europe, in some ways, not just the terrorism, but the change in culture, is a preview of things to come.
Some people call it cultural genocide. And we have to have an honest conversation about that. I don't think anyone voted for that.
Laura had a good Tuesday because she joined us. Let's be honest. That's how we started. That's how we end.
We're here to serve.
Thanks, Laura. Our friend. You're always welcome.
Thanks,
Thank you so much, Laura. Great to see you. All right, let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some headlines for us. Good morning.
Good Tuesday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's get you started with this. In just a few hours, dash cam video of Tiger Woods' arrest expected to be released, and officers telling TMZ you'll see him acting belligerent and arrogant, refusing to take a breathalyzer. Woods says he wasn't drunk when he was busted in Jupiter, Florida at 3 in the morning. He said he had an unexpected reaction to his medication. The 41-year-old releasing a statement saying, quote, "I would like to apologize with all of my heart to my family, friends, and the fans. I expect more from myself, too. I will do everything in my power to ensure this never happens again." Back in April, Woods had his 4th back surgery. Those issues have cost him most of the last 4 years of his career. In just a few hours, the White House will test America's ability to defend against North Korea's growing nuclear threat. The Pentagon firing off a long-range interceptor over the Pacific Ocean, testing its capabilities to shoot down a missile. It comes as Kim Jong-un vows to send a bigger gift package to the U.S. after a series of launches, the latest landing off the coast of Japan. Japan promising to retaliate. It's a quick look at your headlines on this Tuesday. I'll see you guys in a little bit.
All right.
Thank you, Jillian.
Appreciate it. Coming up, they called it President Obama's drop the mic moment of the 2012 campaign, mocking Mitt Romney on Russia.
A few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back.
Well, if you ask the left especially, it turns out Mitt Romney was right. But you won't hear that from this so-called mainstream media pointing it out. Ed Henry will walk us through the history.
So we hear this term back channel. Who ever heard of a back channel? Has it ever been done before in the history of this nation?
It's not illegal, and it has been done.
Right. How do you know?
Well, because we have proof.
Really?
We have proof. Let's bring in Ed, who is...
Good. Of course. You know this, when I was covering President Obama, remember that he was sitting down with Dmitry Medvedev, who was the president of Russia at the time. Vladimir Putin was the prime minister. This was in the heat of the 2012 presidential campaign, and Barack Obama said this.
This is my last space for you. Yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah. Okay. I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir.
Okay, so that was early in 2012. Tell Vladimir that after I win this election, I'll have more flexibility. Now, if that's not a back channel, it's at least a front channel saying, I want to have this direct pipeline to him. Fast forward to later in 2012, the last presidential debate. Remember how the president mocked Mitt Romney when he said this?
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back, because the Cold War's been over for 20 years.
So you had the Republican presidential nominee saying we need to worry about Russia. It's a big threat. The media, the Democratic president yawned, mocked him. Now fast forward 5 years later. Here's what John McCain is saying about Russia.
I think he is the premier and most important threat, more so than ISIS. We have done nothing in response to the election last November to respond to Vladimir Putin's attempt to change the outcome of our elections. So, way to go, Vladimir. We haven't responded at all to it.
So he's saying that he thinks Russia is a bigger threat right now than ISIS. A flip from what President Obama was saying a few years ago. And now you have people running around saying Jared Kushner may be in criminal jeopardy here because he wanted to have a quote-unquote back channel with Russia when we have the last Democratic president on tape saying he wanted a back channel.
And now we find out the Fox News moved this story, and it turns out it was the ambassador, the Russian ambassador, approached Jared about a back channel. Also,
for one single phone call, by the way,
right?
And a back channel that never occurred, just one phone call.
But by the way, also in 2014, according to Bloomberg, President Obama reached out behind the scenes to set up a back channel with Russia, despite the fact that they invaded the Ukraine and done nothing to even warrant this type of communication.
I am sure, Brian, there was a lot of outrage about that at the time.
Yep.
Thank you, Ed.
No, not at all.
Pull that up for us, Ed.
Yeah. That was sarcasm.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to see you. President Trump preparing to set up a war room in the White House to deal with the Russia investigation.
No longer have to pay for a public school board's lavish dinners. The San Francisco Chronicle calling out University of California President Janet Napolitano for spending more than, get this, $225,000 on expensive meals. But the gravy train, it is over. The board will have to pay for themselves from now on to avoid questions. More than just questions. That's a ton of cash. And corruption at the VA. A manager fired by the president on day one on January 20th is now back on the job. Former Puerto Rico hospital director Dwayne Hamill attempted to fire a whistleblower that was under his chain of command who had outed him for a DUI arrest. The president, he was so corrupt that the president gave him the boot on day one of his administration. But after filing a civil service protections appeal, the corrupt hospital employee director has returned to work. Yet another example why the VA needs the ability to fire employees. Right now they can't. They put them back to work, even if they're as bad as it gets.
All right, now let's go to a Fox News alert.
All right, we're going to bring in former deputy campaign manager for Donald J. Trump for president, Mr. David Bossie. Good morning to you, David.
Good morning.
Breaking news this morning. We were just interviewing Kellyanne Conway. We had heard word that Mike Dubke, the communications director under President Trump, was stepping down, was resigning. We asked her about it. Listen to this.
In terms of, quote, staff shakeups, I always read things that simply aren't true. I work here every day. It's much more collaborative than people realize. I think that we're constantly being told by people who have never worked in any White House, let alone this White House, exactly what's going on here.
All right, we have on the bottom of the screen that Mike Dubke is out as the White House communications director. Can you confirm that, yes or no?
So what I will say is that he has expressed his desire to leave the White House and made very clear that he would see through the president's international trip.
All right, so David, what's your reaction?
Well, I don't know Mike Dubke very well, but he has done a good job in trying to put together a communications staff at the White House, and it looks like it's his time to move on because the White House looks like it's going in a little bit different direction.
David, you've been on this program multiple times saying, hey, we need different personnel, more personnel. Is this the extent of what may change, or should we expect to see additional changes?
I look at this White House as a very good, the nucleus of a very good team. I think that they are very dedicated to this president and to the president's agenda and getting it through Congress and enacting all of the policies that he got elected on. What I think is it's much more about addition than subtraction. In essence, they need to really fill their ranks. They've really been kind of a Spartan crowd at the White House. They need to beef it up, and they need to bring in some talent who are dedicated to the president.
So there's going to be what are you considering?
I hate to speak for myself, Brian.
Well, cue your spokesperson.
Through a spokesperson, I'll say, it's an honor and a privilege to consider the president of the United States your friend. He's somebody I've known for a long time. I worked on his campaign. I worked on the transition. And so for me to be reached out to talk about opportunities that present themselves at the White House is kind of a heady thing for a little guy like me. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but the White House needs good people who mean well for the country and who want to do the right thing for the country. And so they've talked to many people, including me.
David, is that a yes? Have you been asked?
No, I'm not going to say that that there's something sitting on the table for me to pick. That would be a little. I think it's an ongoing conversation, and I think that's a fair way to put it.
When you say when you say they're Spartan ranks, how short are they in terms of manpower?
Well, it's an incredibly hard job. The hours are incredible. The intensity is like nothing you've ever seen. So you need as many people locked arm in arm as possible to help the president every single day, because that's your job, is to get the president's agenda through. And so, when you
it's about 1,000, I hear, David. I hear there's about 1,000 people that need to be appointed.
Oh, but Brian, I think it's probably more than that across the government. But inside the White House staff, that's what I'm talking about, is just the fundamentals of trying to bring in some folks who can help alleviate the stress on those that are there and make it run just easier and cleaner.
Well, David, the media has been unrelenting, as you know. There have been questions about the best way to handle that media. The war room's being talked about, something we've already discussed.
Yeah, it's confirmed.
It's confirmed that it's going to happen. That's part of it. But daily briefings have been in question from both the president and otherwise. We had Speaker Gingrich on this program this weekend, asked him about should they cancel the daily press briefings. This is what he had to say.
If I said to you, oh, there's a lion eating a zebra, you wouldn't go, oh my gosh, I thought they'd become friends. How could that lion be eating his friend? You go, yeah, they're a lion. They eat zebras, okay? The left-wing media hates Donald Trump. The left-wing media wants to destroy Donald Trump. This is why they should cancel the daily briefings.
All right. Well, we had Kellyanne Conway on, as you know, earlier in the show, and she did confirm that Sean Spicer is going to do that press briefing at 2 o'clock today. What can we expect?
Well, I think Newt is exactly right. The mainstream media is in to destroy this presidency and to, for the first time, nullify an election. And the American people need to stand up and say enough's enough. And that is part of the problem that I see is once we won, we get a little complacent. Our side gets a little complacent. No president has ever seen a permanent obstruction campaign like President Trump.
But is the White House press shop going to stand up and say enough's enough? We're just not going to do this anymore. We're not going to submit ourselves to this every day because it takes so many hours to prepare for it. Then you get assaulted. Then you had to deal with the backlash. Why is it worth it?
First of all, only in the last 15 years or so have we really seen the advent of the celebrity press conference, right? That's what it's become. And for 220 years, the American people didn't have to deal with that. So I think my position isn't that the White House should put out less information. It should be maybe done differently. So Sean Spicer and the communications team, maybe the war room, can push back in different ways without having to take this daily beating that's a ritual by the mainstream media. And I find it to be really offensive.
Wow. All right, David, so you would cut it back. David Bossie, thanks so much. Good luck with your decision.
Appreciate
Thanks for having me.
All right, coming up, how do Somali refugees living in America feel about our military? I went back to the Somali community a year after I did so before to get their take on current affairs. What I found, it may concern you in some ways.
Homegrown terror in the Twin Cities. Since 2007, dozens of Somali men have left Minnesota to go and join al-Shabaab and other terrorist groups in the Middle East.
Yep, last year, Pete Hegseth went to the Cedar Riverside area of his hometown of Minneapolis to speak with Somali refugees simulating as the President Obama.
That's right. We went to the street and people, or second-generation Somalis, trying to get their thoughts on President Trump, his refugee policies, his rhetoric, and his talk of radical Islamic terrorism. Take a look. What do you think of President Trump and his policies?
No, it's not good. It's pretty messed up to see like your own president saying, we don't want you guys here, but I'm guessing it's just one of those things you gotta live with, I guess.
A lot of people say that because of his rhetoric here that he's anti-Muslim or that's the view. But then he goes to Saudi Arabia. The keeper of two of the holiest sites in Islam, and he's very well received by Muslim leaders.
A better future is only possible if your nations drive out the terrorists and drive out the extremists.
Why is that?
I don't know. I'm guessing it's more about money, because I feel like when money is involved, they put all religion to the side, basically. He cares more about his business than he does anything else.
It's all about the money, man.
What do you think of his rhetoric, though? He uses phrases like radical Islamic terrorism.
We are going to kill us.
It's just the G's from...
He's doing great.
Hey guys, would you be willing to talk to us real quick?
All he does is really tap into people's fears. And once you do that, you can kind of take advantage of really, really gullible people that have never been around Muslims.
These kids, when they feel marginalized and the greatest nation in America, and they don't feel like they can be a part of something. Do you blame them for wanting to go halfway across the world and joining an army there?
Yes, because that's our enemy.
I think all militaries are terrorists.
Would they include U.S. military?
You go to terror.
How did that change?
How does that still need a president? Showed what we could. There were certain instances where it was such a explicit tirade that we couldn't even put it on camera. But, you know, good people, good Muslims in that area as well. The challenge is, will that community that sent, unfortunately, young men to go fight with ISIS and al-Shabaab, can they rein that in and make sure it's not radicalized? So here to help us answer that question is the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and the author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Doctor, you saw that video. First of all, just your reaction.
Well, I have to tell you, imagine this. You talk to them and you find out what the ideas are that are brewing within. It's not that hard. And yet the last administration has been focused on violent extremism. And yet we wonder why 40 to 50 jihadists have come from the Minneapolis area. And we look at Manchester and other attacks, and we then look at the mosque where they came from, and the mosque is brewing. What are we hearing from? What is the common theme? These aren't just political ideas that you got here. This is a platform, a global platform of political Islam that demonizes America, that equates our moral military with terrorists, that says America is after money. All of this is part of the Muslim Brotherhood Islamist global Wahhabi platform. And until we Muslims, you know, there were some positive messages there. I think what strikes me as an American Muslim is, why aren't you hearing more contrition? Why aren't you hearing more about, we want to decimate ISIS along with our country, America? Why is that? Because all of what they're marinating in is this anti-American Islamism. Not violence, but that's the precursors to the violence that then makes their
don't they go to
followers
school?
susceptible.
But don't they go to public school? And in public school, is that acceptable?
Well, listen, you know, that's like when they said the Boston bombers, they were normal, they just went to normal American schools. The ideology comes from the families and from the mosques, the Islamic communities. There's a segregation of consciousness despite where they may go to school. That's not going to happen.
So what
the
do we
changes
do
and the
about it?
assimilate.
I mean, how do you stop that?
Well, listen, we're losing this campaign because the Islamists globally are marinating them in their mosques and elsewhere. We have no pro-American, pro-freedom, anti-Islamism campaign within the Muslim consciousness domestically and abroad. And until we start to engage Muslim organizations that are part of our Muslim reform movement, that are contrite, that are willing to take on these ideas and defend our American troops, defend our policies, and we're going to continue to see this type of ideological precursors.
Doctor, I appreciate that commentary. I did ask about the imams in the mosques. Some said they said they discouraged radicalism. Others said it was never talked about at all. So I think your point is spot on.
Yeah, I mean, Pete, how do they define radicalism? They will define it when you ask them as violence or wanting to strap on bombs. Everything you got on the mic there was radicalism as far as I'm concerned, because it's anti-American, it's not pro-freedom, pro-liberty, and doesn't show leadership in countering the ideas that are precursors to radicalization.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, thank you very much for your expertise. We appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right, coming up straight ahead, Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly says those White House leaks are close to treason. And could they also be putting American lives at risk?
And you know her as the former co-host of Fox and Friends on the weekends. Now she is living down under in Australia. But this morning, Anna Koyman's back with a big announcement.
She said, "You come from a land down under."
All right, President Trump has been plagued with leaks since his inauguration, and now they're starting to impact our allies. Following the deadly bombing in Manchester, the British stopped sharing intel with the U.S. for a couple of days out of concern for those leaks, like naming the bomber ahead of time and showing the bomb. Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly says these leaks are a threat to our country.
I believe when you leak the kind of information that seems to be routinely leaked, the high level of classification, I think it's darn close to treason.
So are these leaks potentially putting American lives at risk? And what about the future? Lieutenant Colonel Michael Waltz joins us right now. Special Forces and author of Warrior Diplomat, Green Berets Battles from Washington to Afghanistan. So you know how to fight, you know how to work the diplomatic circles. And Colonel, let me ask you, it looks like there's some of these leaks are coming from inside the White House. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's incredibly tough to deal with it, and the administration needs to clamp down on it. Look, Brian, I can't overstate operationally what a problem these things are. You know, I remember back 15 years ago when the fact that Osama bin Laden was using a satellite phone was leaked to the New York Times, and guess what? He stopped using that phone and his trail went cold in Tora Bora. And of course, we all remember the Snowden leaks that revealed to the world which software, apps, and other types of programs that the NSA could no longer hack. And we see terrorists using these same programs to communicate with each other to bomb Paris, London, and all kinds of places all over Europe and to operationally plan. We have to clamp down on this, and we also know that ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and these other groups have English-speaking cells that scour American newspapers to look for leaks so that they can react and change their tactics. It is something that is absolutely detrimental, and it puts lives at risk.
Colonel, we remember when Portegas was hired at the CIA. They didn't want him for some reason, and they started leaking things out about President Bush's administration. They reached a détente. They made a change. I mean, some of this stuff is coming from almost trusted, respected people, I think, inside the CIA and FBI and maybe the NSA. How do you get a détente to help America? Do you have a recommendation going forward, a real one?
Well, I think you need to see some prosecutions. You need to see some folks tracked down, and, you know, regardless of their motivations, oftentimes they think they're helping people, or they think they're helping a cause or their own agenda, or they're frustrated. But I'm sorry, you know, there are IGs, there are internal mechanisms to voice your concerns. There's the dissenting mechanism within the State Department. But at the end of the day, I think when folks see that this isn't just kind of a ha-ha and it's shrugged off you know, by our senior leadership, that there's some actual prosecutions, I think it'll stop. Because at the end of the day, not only is it operationally putting lives at risk, it also makes for bad policy. I saw when I worked for Vice President Cheney, the circles getting smaller and smaller and smaller that are making these decisions, and our best talent out in the agencies are cut out of the decision-making loop because everybody's afraid of leaks. So it does a lot more harm than good, and I want to see some prosecutions.
Hey, you know what? It never would have happened under the vice president. Cheney knows the back channels, the front channels, and he would make sure it didn't happen.
Well, it didn't come out of his shop, that I can tell you.
I can tell you that for sure, too. It's real damaging. Thanks so much, Colonel. Great to see you.
All right, thanks, Brian.
All right, next on our rundown, you know her as the former co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Now she's living down under in Australia, but this morning Anna Koyman is back with a big announcement. There she is. But first, let's check in with Bill Hemmer for what's coming up on your show. Hey, Bill.
Nice to see you, Brian. Ramadan's begun. ISIS is back at it. Another day, another strike. This was a deadly season a year ago. Watch this story coming up. Back at home now, President Trump starts the week at the White House. How did that overseas trip change the course of his administration? What's the truth behind the Russia matter? Full details on what we know today. And what will the Republican-led Congress get done? Big questions today on tax reform, on health care. We'll talk to one of its members coming up live. We'll see you in 10 minutes here in America's Newsroom, top of the hour.
Well, we all know our friend Anna Koyman. She moved to Sydney, Australia with her Australian husband, Tim, last fall. And this morning, she's back with a special announcement.
That is right. Joining us now from Down Under, former Fox and Friends Weekend co-host, Anna Koyman. Good morning, Anna.
Hey, Anna.
Hi. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
What time is it there? It's dark.
Yes, it is almost 11 p.m. So I can tell you how Tuesday went. I can tell you about the future.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Okay, so here's the big announcement. Here's the big announcement. I've been teasing it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, and so have you. We are so proud to announce that I'm going to be hosting the hashtag Proud American coverage for July 4th this year for Fox News Channel. I can't wait. You know the deal. You know how it all works. So this is the 4th year that we've done it. We've been in Centerville, Ohio. We've been in Charleston, South Carolina, and Nashville, Tennessee, and now in Southport, North Carolina, which is a very special place for me in particular because Southport is just outside of Wilmington, North Carolina, where I went to college, and then I was a Cub reporter. Southport is where I did a lot of my very first reporting. Also, last year, the governor of North Carolina crowned me the North Carolina Azalea Queen there in Wilmington, just outside of Southport. So I can't wait to selfishly go down there and see my buddies and my friends and my family and meet a lot of viewers. So I can't wait. There are going to be military ceremonies, parades, all sorts of festivities. We want you to be a part of it too. Make sure you use the hashtag Proud American. Tell us what makes you proud to be an American and share your pictures the whole 4th of July weekend.
How does being outside America change your perspective about America, if at all?
Well, Brian, you know what? Watching the news here in Australia, Donald Trump is the headline on pretty much every newscast, the lead. So it lets you know just how important we really are to the rest of the world and how important our alliances are. That's one thing that makes me proud to be an American is the strong alliance that we have with other countries around the world like Australia and our military might covering stories at Camp Lejeune, at Fleet Week there in New York City where you guys are. The military coverage just made me so much more of a proud American. It was a perfect recipe for a red, white, and blue kind of anchor, and I'm so proud of my time there at Fox, and I'm proud to be part of this Proud American coverage too. Coming
I
out
know
July
your
4th.
Parents in North Carolina are going to be so happy to have you home. Anna, before you moved to Australia,